Different interpretations. I hope it gave listeners an idea or a taste of this composer or this piece if they haven't heard it before, and maybe they'll listen to the whole thing.
You are listening to And If Love Remains, a unique show spotlighting people, ideas, science, culture, and art. Your host, Mike Lovett.
Yes, Rachel, you are listening to that great podcast in the sky, And If Love Remains. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mike Levitt, your sometimes virtuous, occasionally vile, always virile host. And with your help, we will go viral by doing that thing that you do, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. You know what to do. And we have, again, with us, the maestro of music, the king of keys, the prince of pianism, the one and only Elias-Axel Pettersson. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be back. We're going to have a fun episode of yet some more music that we're going to listen to and critique, if you will.
We are. This is great. This has been so much fun getting to listen to these great artists play wonderful music. And this is a part 3 of this kind of
our ongoing series.
That's right, our ongoing series. Yeah, and it will probably go on for a while. I mean, we have other songs here to do, but hey, this can continue. This has been fun. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun. A lot of great music and artists and performers out there.
So just why don't you kind of do a quick recap for those who have, this might be the first of the series that they're hearing. What are we listening to? What are we going to be doing today, Elias?
Well, we're listening to hopefully 2 pieces today, and one of them is by a composer that might not be too familiar to a lot of listeners, Leos Janáček. He is a Czech composer from the late 19th century to early 20th century. Or to mid 20th century. And he was a very interesting composer in that he was very self-critical, much like Brahms. And so these are the 2 composers I think of whenever somebody asks, what's the best composer? And I say, in terms of quality of output versus quantity, probably Janáček and Brahms, because they destroyed so much of their music that wasn't perfect or up to their standard. And this sonata, this piece that we're going to be listening to, actually we're only going to be listening to a part of the first movement. This was an example of a piece that was destroyed actually and came back to us. So I think we did a podcast just on this piece in the past, so listeners that are interested can check that out. But
so this is from 1905.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has kind of a dark history. There was, Janáček was living in the town of Brno in Moravia at the time, or now the Czech Republic, and it was sort of split between German and Czech citizens. And there was a German university, but not a Czech university, and so students were protesting to have equal representation and to have a university for them as well in their native tongue. The police and the authorities did not like that, and so they kind of quashed the protests, the riots, and a couple people were killed, including a student, and that's what this piece is sort of based on. Janáček saw what happened. The student was bayoneted or gunned down, and it was October 1st, 1905, hence the title 1X 1905. And he was very touched and just disturbed by this. And he wrote this piece kind of in a fury and very quickly. And it has this first movement called the Presentiment. I'm not going to try it in Czech. And originally it was 3 movements long. So when he wrote it, it was 3 movements. And it was... I don't remember if all 3 movements were premiered. I think just 2 were. He really disliked the 3rd movement, so he burned it.
Really?
And nobody nobody has found it or has a copy of it. But he did give a copy of these two movements to one of his students at the conservatory where he was teaching. And after the premiere, he thought, this really isn't that great either. And so he threw it into the river, his score. But luckily she kept it. And then many years later, she dug it out and played it for him at his 70th birthday. And he said, okay, it's not bad. So you can publish it. So that's how we come to this piece, is that
wow.
It's the student's copy, probably a handwritten copy of his score that he tried to destroy twice, the third movement, and then the first and second movements. And we just have the first and second movements. And I think they work great together. So the second movement
what
is
a perfectionist
death.
This guy's got to be. Wow. I mean, that's insane. All right. So, who's going to be our first artist?
So we have three artists. We can listen to Lazar Berman. He made one of the first major, I guess, seminal recordings and benchmark recordings of this. It's one that I consulted when I was learning the piece, a couple decades ago. And this is from, I think, 1996 is the one I sent you, although he played it before that.
Fabulous. Let's take a peek. Let's take a listen.
And then it repeats. That I wanted to listen to that without any commentary, just so we get an idea, because this is probably a very foreign sounding piece to a lot of people. It's not maybe so easy to grasp, although it does have a lot of sentiment and just heartfelt, raw emotion in it. But yeah, I mean, you've heard it a little bit. What were some of your thoughts?
First of all, I felt like he definitely knows how to paint a picture. I mean, between like the some of the chaotic moments and the subtle change in dynamics where it gets quite loud and then it comes down very quickly to almost a very serene like setting, and so that contrast, you can see that there's some. I mean, if I hadn't known the backstory, but I knew it was some sort of tone poem, I would have thought that, this is some sort of, battle mob. I mean, you kind of feel that kind of uncertainty going on, that pain going on. And then that the quiet parts are really, like I said, they're serene, but in a very, almost, gloomy way, I guess. It's gloomy. That's probably a good word to say.
I think that is a very morose. Gloomy is a great descriptor, I think. So it's so interesting. I've played this. I've recorded it. I have very personal opinions of it, and so it's interesting now listening to this recording, which I haven't listened to for a long time. And I just want to talk about what's in the score and the sort of artistic liberties that Berman takes, which I think are totally justified, but they're not necessarily things I would do. So one of the things with Janáček is that he's quite specific, but sort of enigmatic as well. So his metronome marking is con moto, but it's very fast. He actually probably would have written this as a dotted quarter is 72, and we'll get to how fast that is in a second. But also his meter. Typically, we see meters like 4/4, 3/4, maybe something strange like 5/4 or 3/8, 6/8. He doesn't write any of that. He writes above the staff 2/quarter note. So it seems like it's 2/4. That's what it would seem to me.
Yeah.
But then there are 3 beats, or rather, sorry, 2/dotted quarter note.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a 3/4, or it's 2 large beats of dotted quarter, because you can't have in the denominator a dotted note.
Right. So it's not quite like a 6/8, but it's
but it feels like that sometimes, and then it feels like 3/4 sometimes. So I think he gave that indication to give himself the most flexibility. And in music, when we have, let's say, a 3/4 measure or a section in 3/4, and it sounds more like 2, it's called hemiola. So I think he likes to play around with that hemiola effect.
Mm-hmm.
You get this thing like going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
You get that effect. And also he has some sextuplets and triplets and some funky rhythms, and fitting things together in the hands is a little bit tricky as well. There are some sections where it's what I would call very unpianistic. He was an organist, he was a pianist, but some of the things seem, impossible. And a lot of pianists redo the fingering, so they redistribute some of the notes from the left hand to the right hand. I actually keep it as the original, but it's sometimes very tough to maneuver that and to voice things. So that's all to set up the setup to say that I think Berman does an incredible job bringing out the voices when he needs to. But he doesn't always follow the dynamics. He sometimes does the opposite. And then, but it's with such this like beautiful tone. Sometimes we talk about an accent. It doesn't mean necessarily louder. It just means that you're bringing attention to that. So you can suddenly go to a whisper, and that can draw attention to something just as much as if you scream it. And I think he uses that a lot, that effect. So
that is an interesting concept. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought we'd listen to it a little bit again, now that we kind of have it in our ear, and then we'll get to compare it to others. But I want to get the metronome marking. I was getting my phone out here to get the metronome marking. What the original tempo is, so 72 for the dotted quarter. So each measure, we have 6/8 notes. 1 da 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 dun 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 da dum ba da ba 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 1 2 3 1 2 dum ba da ba 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 1 2 3. Now, of course, within that framework, you can take a little bit of time here and there, but we'll see that he really stretches it.
Yeah, I don't think he goes that fast.
Not even close. So let's try the beginning and see how fast he's going.
Okay.
So already it's kind of, give and take a lot, but much slower. And then on those da 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 da, takes a lot of time. Yeah. If you want to pause it for 1 second.
Sure. There's a lot of unevenness there, and I think purposefully done.
Yes.
It's like you feel that, that back and forth.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of tension that's held, and when it comes to that bum 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 ba da 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 da, that's actually a subito forte. So Janáček is sort of like Beethoven. He likes these subitos, but Beethoven liked the subito piano, where you crescendo, and then all of a sudden nothing. And sometimes Janáček likes to quiet, and then boom, surprise you. I think I just surprised my cat. Sorry about that. So in any case, he loves these dynamic very fast dynamic shifts and temporal shifts. So, I don't think Berman quite follows those indications, but what he does is still bring those figures to the fore by like da, 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 very sensitively, which I really like. We'll go a little bit farther, and I'll tell you this is a very scary piece to start because of measure 11. So we'll keep going.
I heard that.
Starting right here. So this figuration, let's see if I can even, I'm embarrassed to play it on the piano. But previously, you've got this melody or figuration, which is done with both hands, but then you have to do it with one hand.
Oh, yeah.
While the right hand is doing the beautiful melody. And it's just very awkward to do that with one hand with those jumps. It's very quiet. Whoops, I forgot my score at the piano. How can I talk about it?
Well, and the jumps and the left, it's also rhythmically difficult to put those hands together because you have to have really good independence to do that.
Yeah, luckily most of it's 2 against 1, but the jump sometimes is in the middle, and so you have to get the jump the same length as 2 notes together, and it's easy to play 2 notes next to each other fast. It's hard to play the jump as fast, and so that does throw off your right hand, and sometimes the right hand melody can sound jilted as a result, and it's supposed to just be very vocal, da, 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 instead of da, 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 da,
Right.
You don't want that. So,
well, and you know what? That's a really good word because now that you say that, I mean, this Berman really does bring out that vocal quality in it beautifully. Even in its unevenness with its tempo. I mean, I think that's what a singer would do. Is a singer would ebb and flow quite a bit with a melody like this.
Yeah. I love, we'll go to the next one, but I also just want to point out, the extreme dynamics that Janáček uses. And of course, this is still in 1905. So the classical music world is starting to experiment already a lot, but he's got, in the part we listened to, triple forte with a crescendo after that, again, triple forte, and then the next measure, triple pianissimo, 3 Ps. So 3 Fs to 3 Ps in the matter of 3 seconds or so.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that is cool.
So now that we've kind of heard that, I thought we'd listen to maybe Sungjin Sho, if that one's
That sounds good.
This is a very recent recording.
Here we go. As he's coming to the stage, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, a little bit of a surge there. Yeah, that is a little bigger. I like how he offsets the right hand, left hand there.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this moves a little bit more.
The left hand feels more thunderish.
Yes. And those parallel octaves, very tough passage. So triple forte with a pickup to a triple P. And then there's a middle voice, like an alto range or tenor range, which she brings out beautifully. Oh, interesting. He does those more staccatos.
Were those staccatos added?
Well, so Janáček uses dots and carets, or unit markers, for only the 2 middle 16th notes. repeats the exposition. Yeah, he brings that
Wow.
out a little bit more there. Very, very interesting. Quite different.
Way different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I didn't, I mean, the tempo, it moved a little bit more, but it wasn't that far different. In other words, I don't think he's still hitting close to 72.
No, it's
You know,
I've never heard anybody play at quite that speed. And if they do, they usually slow down, by measure 11
which
for sure.
let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's a common thing with composers, is that they'll set a tempo and then over time, by either tradition or because it's unplayable or, for whatever reason, artists decide, no, it needs to go either faster or slower than what the composer decides. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that interesting, that it's okay to do that with some pieces and maybe not okay with others. And
Yeah.
what's your take on that?
A lot of research. We've had some discussion when it comes to people like Beethoven and Chopin on that. And I think the composers maybe had an idea in their mind. Sometimes they could play it, sometimes they couldn't. But even great composers that were great pianists, like Rachmaninoff, would change from one performance to another.
Right.
And it wasn't that they got older and they played slower necessarily. I mean, Arau, as a pianist, he was a firebrand when he was young, and he played slower and slower, it seemed, when he got older, but it was still phenomenal. But I think composers don't always have the exact idea or the best idea of how something's going to come about until it gets played more often. And great interpreters start to kind of mold their own ideas with the piece. And then it's like, oh, you can actually do it that way, and it captures the essence of the piece, and it doesn't really disturb anything. As long as you're not
that
too
makes me
far.
think of, well, what's funny is that makes me think of the famous New World Symphony by Dvorak. And apparently, from what I learned, that Largo section, the second movement, which is just beautiful, everybody knows it, makes me cry every time. Da 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 da. It's just so beautiful. But apparently, that was written as an adagio, and I believe it was the first conductor who performed the premiere actually told Dvorak, no, this needs to be slower. This needs to be a Largo. And so he played it Largo, and Dvorak's like, yeah, that's the way it needs to be done. So it's like, to think about that piece being done fast is kind of like, I couldn't even imagine that one going, 20 beats faster a minute or something. That would just be bizarre.
We're so used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. I think sometimes, like, composers have an idea, but then interpreters come in and go, I can make this better.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things that come to mind. One is the Scarlatti Sonata that we did, the first of this series, that has such vastly different tempi. It's basically half the speed. One of them is the Gilels recording is half the tempo that Michelangelo takes. And it's such a different piece. They're both sort of true to the score. They just bring out different things. I wouldn't say this piece, the Janacek, has such a diversity of tempi. Mussorgsky certainly has a lot. There are certain recordings that are much slower than others. It also reminds me of some Chopin recordings. I know you've had Wim Winters on about the, double metronome, which I don't.
Yeah, the controversy.
I don't always, agree with that or buy it, but for many reasons that we've discussed. But there were students of Chopin's and students of Liszt's and students of Leschetizky that heard Chopin and would have been able to converse with him or converse with his students and say, well, how fast did he play this piece and how did he imagine it? And they recorded things in the early 1900s. I think Planté was the first that recorded some Chopin etudes, and they're pretty quick, and he's in his like 80s or 90s when he records those. So I don't think he would have remembered something in his 80s or 90s that was totally different from something he heard when he was in his 20s or 30s. It's probably very similar. And so we kind of take that as a tradition. But this piece, I think there's a lot of leeway that can be had. And if you can capture that essence and that story, as you mentioned with Berman, then I think you're on the right path.
Well, and this Cho version is very I mean, it's different, and it is bringing out different things. Like you feel like I said, like when that left hand goes down and you hear that thunderous, it's almost like a thunderstorm, like brooding underneath the melody, and it's it's not exactly, it's not overtaking it, but you're feeling it more than I think in the Berman.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and then even in the beginning, there's some ebb and flow that is like, I don't know, something was different how he played. I think it was a tempo where he would speed up and slow down a little bit more. That I don't know, made me feel like it would like um uneasy, I think is the word.
Yeah, and that is probably, well, it's intentional, but that could really be the heart of the piece.
Right.
It could be getting to the heart of, or the meaning of the piece. So
right,
it
and
was the
how
second move.
how he interpreted that.
Right. Exactly. Well, let's that's good. Let's see what this third one is like. How different or similar, or if we can start to hear some differences and similarities. So this is Aldo Ciccolini, great Italian pianist. And
when was this performed, do you think?
I might have it written. I think, this was from the late 90s. I think I have it as 99.
So again, it's relatively newish.
In the last 3 decades. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the 90s. I'm old. It's new.
I know. Well, it was very regular, and then a lot of time. And that's a forte. Yeah. And then mezzo forte.
Back down.
That's pretty in your face.
Yeah.
And this is quite slow, even slower than Berman.
Yeah. It's really different.
Okay, picks up a little bit.
It's bringing out that.
I love that section. Triple forte. Oh, he goes right into it. That's wow. So he plays that tenor melody or alto melody a little bit before the chords come in.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people do.
Well, it'll bring it out,
Yeah. Great tone. I love this. This is sort of a canon in one hand. It just follows itself and cycles around. Okay. And then we'll cut it. Yeah, the repeat.
Wow, that was different.
Yeah, that's very bombastic in some places.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, you and there is some, this one has more of a shock value because you have those big in the beginning where the other two kind of grew. This was like bang and then soft. Yeah, it had those real subito fortes and subito pianos.
Yeah, and that's what's marked. Yeah, he has pianissimo at the beginning, third measure, mezzo forte when that first leap comes, vocal leap, if you will. It's a fifth, perfect fifth, and then decrescendo to, let's say, mezzo piano or something like that. Then forte immediately, and then mezzo forte decrescendo, and then forte again. So he really brings that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah, where the other two, you felt a more gradual growth towards that measure 11, measure 13, where everything kind of just blows up. This was more of like shots heard in the night, and then it just explodes at the end. It's very different, and I like it. Like, that's the things I like. All three of these a lot.
Yeah, me too. That's why I chose them. It's funny because, I listened to all three of these, and there are some others that I'd listened to as well in preparing this piece. And I do different things from all of them. And even from when I recorded it first, which was a commercial recording. When did I make that one? 2000. 6. But then I played it in some recitals during my doctoral degree, many years later. So the last time I played it was 2011. And already in those 5 years, I had changed it. And I've brought it back since, in I think the last time I played it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was different still. So,
yeah.
And
would it be different if you brought it back again? Like, have you had some more insights that you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think this kind of a piece is something it's always evolving. In a way, it's something I can bring back pretty quickly because the structure is it's like perfect structure in terms of the number of measures. We always talk about Mozart and having this structure where it's very delineated and easy to follow, 2 + 2 and 4 + 4 and 8 + 8 and all that. Janacek, this sonata too, I counted them once. I don't know. It's like 60 some or 70 some odd measures or something like that. No, I'm wrong. It's 90 measures or 91 measures. But the exposition timing is like, if you repeat it, is exactly the same as the development plus the recapitulation. And it's like right in the middle. And there's the golden mean or whatever that comes at exactly the right spot, within a half a measure or something like that. So just the form is very
so easy it makes it so nice to perform.
Yeah, it's very satisfying to perform, and it comes back. Aside from a couple very difficult technical sections, I usually can bring this back relatively quickly. In the first movement, the second movement is very difficult to bring back for me because we're not going to listen to it today. I would suggest people listen to it. It's so slow. And so it's actually really emotionally draining. So I can't practice it that much because when you get into it, it's not like the notes are hard. There are big stretches. I have no problem with those, but I'm just playing and counting, and you're putting all your effort, every ounce of effort into each second that you're counting, and you can't really practice that for so many minutes or hours at a time.
Right.
So bringing that back is just tougher for the memory. There's some odd chords, so I have to do a lot of mental practice with that one when I bring it back. But the first one just fits so beautifully into the hands. Even the awkward sections, once you start getting your arms moving, it also fits very nicely. So anyhow.
Nice.
Yeah. This
very
is pretty
cool.
cool.